think it's safe to say there was no other game that captured the action fantasy genre more perfectly than Golden Axe. Sega's lead producer Makoto Yoshida apparently was a huge fan of the Conan the Barbarian movies, and he wanted to create a game influenced by these movies using 3 central characters: a barbarian, an Amazon and a dwarf. Golden Axe had a couple of unique gameplay ideas that really set it apart from other games in this genre, like your character having the ability to ride fire-breathing dragons and whip-tailed chicken leg beasts to pick off enemies at a safe distance, as well as being able to cast magic spells collected from blue hobbits that inhabit each level. Magic can be used at any time during battle once enough magic pots have been collected, and can be used as a means of crowd control to take down as many enemies as possible or to get out of some sticky situations. Golden Axe was released on nearly every home computer and console, with several sequels and spin-off games, including a few role-playing games and even a versus game. For this top 5, I'll be focusing on the arcade-style games and sequels of Golden Axe, and not the role-playing and versus games. So let's jump straight into it with the 5th best game of the series. Golden Axe 3 was released in 1993 as an exclusive only in Japan, but was available in the US via the Sega Channel. This Genesis-only second sequel had 4 new selectable characters, new magic, all new enemies, and even a versus mode. The new character additions are Kronos, a humanoid Black Panther, a grappler named Proud Cragger, Kane Grinder, a swordsman who resembles Axe Battler, and Sarah Byrne, who resembles Tyrus Flare. I really do like the new character designs in this game, and there's 1 or 2 interesting boss characters, such as the anthropomorphic eagle, who's also added in as an extra selectable character in the versus mode option. What holds Golden Axe 3 back are mainly down to the backdrops and sound not being of a high enough standard for a Golden Axe game, and this is probably part of the reason Sega gave it a limited release. The lush fantasy settings which made the series so unique in the first place ends up being completely lost here, and what we get instead are lifeless backdrops made up of flat colours, or else a plain stone wall that fills the entire screen. It's a similar issue with the sound. Part of the reason that Golden Axe Arcade was so engaging was partly due to the superb sound effects that really enhanced the gameplay experience, but what we get here are bland, low quality effects with grainy voice samples that sound like they could belong in any generic home console beat 'em up. The music, on the other hand, is really great, some of the best in the series in fact. It's just a pity the audio effects aren't up to the same standard. In terms of gameplay, Golden Axe 3 had the most balanced and enjoyable gameplay of the 3 Golden Axe games on the Genesis. Trying to spam just one move is less effective, as enemies will block after a certain amount of damage, which forces the player to use a variety of moves and find out which one is the most effective in each situation. The move list is quite extensive, with the largest variety of moves seen in any Golden Axe game. There's even super moves that can be triggered with a unique button combination, and using this is vital to getting through some of the more difficult levels later on. Each character also has the ability to block and grapple, and certain characters can double jump and air jump. In multiplayer mode, the characters can do team projectile attacks and even combine their magic spells to dish out even more damage. The quantity and variety of moves is really impressive in this game. It's also got selectable branching paths, each having their own ending, with an additional final ending also achievable based on how many continues you use and how many possessed enemies you rescue. In terms of depth, Golden Axe 3 was by far the best in the series. If the visuals were more consistent and more effort put into the audio effects, I feel Golden Axe 3 had the potential to be one of the best Golden Axe games. These issues aside, I still feel the smarter enemy AI, nicely animated main sprites, variety of moves available, and long playthrough with multiple paths are enough to make it the 5th best game in the series. Golden Axe 2 was released in December 1991 and skipped the arcade completely, instead going straight to the Sega Genesis as an exclusive on the system. There's a new story, new levels, new enemies and boss characters, along with a new soundtrack. Sega managed to give Golden Axe fans a decent sequel without changing a hell of a lot. The controls are the same, there's 2-player co-op, the dual mode is still there, and it's 7 levels, 3 lives and 3 continues, just like the first game. There are a few nice improvements. The reverse attack performed by pressing the jump and attack buttons simultaneously for each character was changed to a more useful attack that can hit enemies on all sides. Enemies can now be thrown in either direction by pressing left or right on the D-pad immediately after picking them up, making it easier to hit other enemies with them or throw them off cliffs. The magic spell casting was completely overhauled and a really nice feature was added so you can vary the power of the spell depending on how long you hold the button down. The visual animations on magic spells were also changed, with Axe Battler's exploding magic from the first game now being replaced with wind magic, and Gilius Thunderhead using rock magic instead of lightning. Tyra's Flare retains the fire magic but now has entirely new animations. While the improvements are definitely a welcome addition, I still prefer the first Golden Axe's visual look for both the reverse attack and the magic spell animations. Unfortunately, Golden Axe 2 has some seriously cheap enemy AI, especially in the final 2 levels, and as a result, spamming the reverse attack becomes the only way to progress without losing all your continues and starting the game all over again. Like Golden Axe 3, the sound effects are a bit disappointing and not up to the original Genesis or Golden Axe Arcade standard, and the same can be said for the voice samples. I did enjoy the soundtrack though. There's some memorable tracks and it's a definite improvement over the first game, especially the theme tune for the boss characters. It's super good. There's really not much more I can say about Golden Axe 2 other than the fact I much prefer the original. The improvement in how magic is used was a nice touch, but the new visual animations for them were a downgrade. It is a bit longer and has slight graphical improvements, and there's a few new enemies on boss characters to battle with, so if you liked the first one, this is definitely still worth a look. Golden Axe on the Genesis really was quite an achievement, and it's still the closest you can get to the dedicated arcade cabinet on any home system. However, there was a few downgrades to squeeze it all into that 4MB Genesis cart. There's less detail on terrain and backdrops, less animations on mountable beasts and dragons, lower quality music, and less voice sampling. However, the game did feature an extra level, an extra final boss character and a new ending, as well as the inclusion of Duel Mode, which lets you fight various combinations of enemies one round at a time for 12 rounds. This mode also features a beginner mode option that lets you play the first 3 stages with easier enemies and an easier version of Death Adder, the final boss. Difficulty is definitely ramped up in this game. It's a real challenge to beat the final boss, as you just get 4 continues and using all 4 of them requires a restart from the very beginning. Enemy AI is a little smarter, but you can still cause them to walk off ledges just like the first game if you steer them in the right direction. In terms of music and audio, what we get here is a lower quality but accurate rendition of the arcade version. A few voice samples have been dropped unfortunately, but the ones that are included are decent and sound so much better than the 2 awful voice samples used in the Mega CD version. Other than the audio, there's really not much more to say about the Mega CD version, so I guess play the Genesis version if you want to hear the better voice sampling, or play the Mega CD version if you want a better quality soundtrack. Overall, it's still the best home conversion of Golden Axe out there, and it really gives the dedicated arcade version a run for its money. It was really difficult to decide if I should put this into second position, but visuals and sound are so important in this type of game, and the next game was just that little bit better. If you want to play the best version of Golden Axe, well, there was no debate really, it was Golden Axe Arcade. While the Genesis did an incredible job capturing the important elements of gameplay, visuals and sound with its limited hardware, the finer details inevitably had to be left out. There's more colours, more frames of animation on all main characters, more animations on mountable beasts, more detail on backgrounds and scenery, higher quality music and much higher quality audio effects. Notice the amount of detail here crossing the Eagle and Turtle Bridge, and you will get some idea of what you're missing if you've only seen this game on a Genesis. It was the very same with the audio. A good example is the chunky impact sounds of enemy soldiers and armoured giants toppling to the ground after being blasted with a dragon fireball. Everything sounds so much better in Golden Axe Arcade. The visual animations for magic spells were so much more impressive here than in any other game in this series, both in quality and in quantity. The Amazon had 6 unique animations for each level reached, the Barbarian had 4 and the Dwarf had 3. That's 13 completely different visuals for magic spells, and they all looked awesome. The more blue pots collected, the more damage it inflicts and the more impressive the visual. If you're playing as the Amazon, level 1 could be used by collecting 1 to 4 magic potions, surrounding all enemies with a blazing fire. Level 6 magic could be triggered by collecting 9 magic potions, which inflicts maximum damage and summons a fire-breathing dragon for one of the best looking visuals in the series. I have to mention the ending here too. It's a nice twist on the generic stuff you would normally find in this type of game. There's not many fourth wall breaking endings in video game history, but there's one here in Golden Axe Arcade. Presumably through the use of magic, we see some random characters escaping into the real world through the arcade cabinet screen. It's got its share of issues of course, it's limited in depth with a short playthrough and the enemy AI can be a bit sketchy, but the simple hack and slash action combined with the awesome visuals and sound keeps you engaged, and it's a real challenge to finish it on 1 credit. In terms of a sequel, Sega never quite got it right on the Genesis. All anyone really wanted was more Golden Axe Arcade with a longer playthrough, more fantasy settings, and most importantly, one that wasn't watered down. It took a few years, but that's exactly what Sega did in the next game on this list. Golden Axe: The Revenge of Death Adder came out about a year after Golden Axe 2 on the Genesis, and this really felt like a great sequel, and a true evolution of the series. Yet for some reason, Sega chose not to release it anywhere else. Yet again, the original cast of Golden Axe have now been replaced by 4 new characters: Goa the Giant, Sternblade the Barbarian, Dora the female centaur, and Trix the Elf that relies on speed and carries a pitchfork. All the great stuff from the first Golden Axe is still here. You can ride different monsters to pick off enemies at a safe distance, those pesky skeletons are alive and well, and you can still collect magic pots from hobbits and cast magic spells. The fire-breathing dragons and chicken leg beasts seen in the first game have now been replaced by a few new ones, and now we have scorpions, including a lightning zapping version, 2 different praying mantis, and even a skeletal dragon that spits out explosive fireballs. The magic option got a bit of a downgrade here, as magic spells do not increase in power with the number of pots collected, but instead require a set number to work with each character. For example, Goa the Giant has the most amount of pots to collect before he can cast his magic, but in turn his magic dishes out the highest amount of damage. I would have preferred to see each character having multiple levels of magic like we saw on the first Golden Axe, but the smaller amount available here still looks really impressive. And the elf character's health replenish magic spell that can be picked up by any character adds a nice strategic element to the gameplay. You can also play this game with 4 characters simultaneously instead of just the usual 2, and there's some hilarious team assisted moves that can be performed in either pairs or with all 4 characters together. The lush fantasy settings and backdrops are some of the best in the series, with some really weird and wonderful locations like these giant mushrooms that wobble realistically when you topple off them, and this gold covered landscape filled with the graves of skeletal warriors. There's also some vertically scrolling transitions and branching paths on certain levels that give a bit more variety, and the levels themselves are quite long, which gives a lot more depth. I really enjoyed the soundtrack in this Golden Axe. It nails the Conan movies atmosphere with minimalist background organ samples in the darker parts of the game to rousing orchestral examples in the brighter, open parts of the game. The iconic Conan the Barbarian voice samples also make a welcome return, and the weapon and impact sound effects are some of the best I've heard in any game in this genre. The main sprites are bigger with more detail, there's more animations for each character, and there's a hell of a lot more action on screen here too. Things can get pretty chaotic, but unlike some of the other Golden Axe games, it's still possible to make it past these tricky areas using a bit of skill and without having to worry about losing health from random cheap shots from poorly programmed enemy AI. As I mentioned, there was no home version, so the only way to play this game is through emulation in MAME, and it's a pretty much perfect emulation. For Golden Axe fans, it was the game that everyone asked for, and it was the best Golden Axe game Sega made in this side-scrolling arcade format. Golden Axe: The Revenge of Death Adder built upon the fantasy elements of the first game, while retaining everything that made that game unique. The Golden Axe series was a difficult game to convert to a home console, and the Sega Genesis came pretty close on a few occasions, but it was also somewhat disappointing that the best game of the series never made it to a home console. Hopefully we'll see a Golden Axe game in the near future that reignites this great franchise. That's it for this video guys, stay tuned for a more interesting top 5 lists like this one, and if you liked the video do consider subscribing as it really motivates me to continue making them. As always, thanks for watching, have a great day and see you all for the next game.